Alright, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy Pretender here, and today I'm here with a build guide for one of my favorite characters to use and lore-wise, Welt. Welt is a hybrid sub-DPS, or base DPS, something like that, slash debuffer. He is a imaginary nihility character, and today I'm going to be going over his kit briefly, what you need to get him up, what materials you need, and the best relics and his best Lightcones along with some alternatives. Now before we get into the video, I appreciate you guys if you can go ahead and drop me a sub. We are now in 2024 and I plan on pushing out content a lot more than I did. In the past I was uploading, but now I took a big break and now I'm back and I plan on making more guides for characters, and so leaving a sub would be greatly appreciated. We're on the road to 1K and let's get into the video. So starting off with Welt's kit here, so his basic attack deals imaginary damage equal to 100% of Welt's attack to a single enemy. His skill, Bounce, Edge of the Void, deals imaginary damage equal to 72% of Welt's attack to a single enemy, and further deals damage 2 extra times, with each time dealing imaginary damage equal to 72% of Welt's attack to a random enemy. On hit, there is a 75% base chance to reduce the enemy's speed by 10% for 2 turns. So when you proc the skill, you'll obviously hit the person you selected to hit, and it will also additionally deal imaginary damage to a random enemy by hitting twice. It could obviously bounce, so it could hit one once and the other one once. That can also happen, and as it says, 75% chance to reduce their speed, and that will be considered as a debuff. As I said, well, it's also a debuffer, so this is a very important part. And his ultimate, Synthetic Black Hole, deals imaginary damage equal to 150% of Welt's attack to all enemies, with a 100% base chance for enemies hit by this ability to be imprisoned for 1 turn. Imprisoned enemies will have their actions delayed by 40% and speed reduced by 10%. So not only are they imprisoned, they're also getting speed reduced, which is, again, more debuffs, very, very powerful. His talent, when hitting an enemy that is already slowed, and as you can see, his skill slows and his ult slows, well, it deals additional imaginary damage equal to 60% of his attack to the enemy. So you get more damage pretty much for slowing them. As I said, you're going to be using this skill very often because it's very powerful, and his ultimate is super good. So you're practically almost always going to have speed debuff or slow on your enemy. And so his technique, after using Welt's technique, create a dimension that lasts for 15 seconds. By 15 seconds, it means in like the open world where you're running around, not actually 15 seconds into the fight. Enemies in this dimension will have their movement speed reduced by 50%, so that's another slow. You can get slow from the technique, the ultimate, and the skill. After entering the battle with enemies in the dimension, there is a 100% base chance to imprison the enemies for 1 turn. Not only getting 50% slow, and then again, imprisoned enemies will have their actions delayed by 20% and speed reduced by 10%. Only 1 dimension created by allies can exist at the same time. Alright, his bonus abilities deals 20% more damage to enemies afflicted with weakness break. So if their weakness break or their weakness broken, you'll be doing more damage. So you can pair him with someone like Ron May, which will make him even more powerful. Second one, Judgment, using ultimate additionally regenerates 10 energy. So when you use the ultimate, you get 10 energy back. Good to have uptime on his ult. And his third one, Retribution, when using ultimate, there's a 100% base chance to increase the damage received by targets by 12% for 2 turns, which is pretty much his vulnerability. So when you throw out the ult, you inflict them with invulnerability. So very good. And now briefly going over his dupes, because obviously he is a standard character, so getting dupes for him might prove difficult. So it's especially not great to consider this in the build guide, obviously, but even if you have him duped out, the order of how you build them, or just how you build them in general, is not that different. Alright, his first Eidolon. After Welt uses his ultimate, his abilities are enhanced. The next 2 times he uses his basic attack or skill, deals additional damage to the target equal to 50% of his basic attack's damage multiplier or 80% of his skill's damage multiplier respectively. So pretty much you pop the ult and you get even more damage. Very solid dupe. His second Eidolon, when his talent is triggered, Welt regenerates 3 energy, so even more energy to have uptime on his ult, which is very important. And his fourth Eidolon, base chance for his skill to inflict speed reduction increases by 35%. So his skill, instead of having a base 75% chance, you get an additional 35% chance, upping that to 110%. So you have a 110% chance to reduce the speed. Very good. And a 6 add-on when using skill deals damage for 1 extra time to a random enemy. So you know how it hits 2 times to a random enemy, respectively? With the skill without this, now that becomes 3 times, so you get even more damage. So yeah, that's Welt's kit and his dupes. Let's move on to what you need to level him up. So the stagnant shadow you will be needing to do is the shape of Mirage here. This one will be used in order to get him to max level up to 80. You'll need a total of 65 of these. Since he is a Nihility character, you're going to be doing the butt of Nihility in order to get up his traces. You'll need 18 of these green ones, 69 of these blue ones, and a total of 139 of the purple ones. The material he uses for his traces on the weekly portions will be from Destruction's beginning. You will need about 12 of these to max his skills entirely. So yeah, that's what Welt does, his basic attack skill, technique, talent, all that, and the materials you need to level him up. And now we will go ahead and talk about the Lightcones. So the thing about Welt is he has different uses. Obviously, some people will want to build him as a debuffer with a bit of damage on top. Some people like me would want to build him as a main damage dealer, or at least a sub damage dealer. So there are 3 good options, and I will be going over all 3 of them. All of them are pretty much good in their own way. I don't think one is inherently better for the other. It really just depends on the role you're doing. Like, In the Name of a World will be better for his own damage, while another one I'm going to talk about is better for the team's damage, and the other one is going to be best for his debuffer slot. So, In the Name of the World is his signature Lightcone that you can get from the shop by exchanging 600 of the blue thingies. I don't actually remember the names off the top of my head. Or you can pull it from losing the 25% of the Lightcone, or you can pull it off standard banner. So this can prove to be a little hard to get. Pretty much what it does is increases the wearer's damage to debuffed enemies by 24%. Well, often imprisons enemies, and he often lowers their speed, so this is a very easy portion to get. And when the wearer uses their skill, the effect hit rate for this attack increases by 18% and attack increases by 24%. So using the skill, as it says, you get 18% effect hit rate and 24% attack. This is probably the one you want to use if you are trying to focus on Welt being more of a DPS, more sustainable for himself as just like a main / sub damage dealer over his role of a debuffer or anything like that, or if you want him to increase team's damage. This is probably the one you want to go with. So another really good one for him is actually Silverwolf's signature Lightcone. The reason for this is because it's not as great for his own damage, but it's a lot better for the team damage, because Aether Code doesn't really apply to him that much, but it applies to the team, so it increases team damage overall. So what it does is it increases the wearer's effect hit rate by 24%, which is really good because there's a certain amount of effect hit rate you want on Welt, even if you're not building him as a support / debuffer kind of character or a sub DPS. Even if you want him as a DPS, there's a certain amount of effect hit rate you want. When the wearer deals damage to an enemy that currently has 3 or more debuffs, increases the wearer's crit rate by 12%, which obviously Welt himself can do good damage, so getting him the crit is very good. After the wearer uses their basic attack, skill, or ultimate, there is a 100% base chance to implement Aether Code on a random hit target that does not yet have it. So if they don't have it, they have a 100% chance to get it. Targets with Aether Code receive 12% increased damage for 1 turn. So your team pretty much will be doing more damage because of this portion right here, because you'll be hitting them harder. So this Lightcone is better for people who want to have their Welt as more of a debuffer to support side role, because this portion right here is going to be better for your team over Welt himself. But obviously you're giving your Welt 12% crit rate and 24% effect hit rate, so it's not as bad. Even if you want to run as DPS, if you have no other option, it's pretty solid even if you want to build as DPS. But again, this is more of a supportive debuffer role. And so a really good one for a pure debuffer Welt is this 4-star one, Good Night and Sleep Well, which, so because it's a 4-star, a lot of people will have it maxed out. So at R1, for every debuff the target has, the damage dealt by the wearer increases by 12%, stacking up to 3 times. This effect also applies to Dot. At R5, that goes up to increases damage dealt by 24%, stacking up to 3 times. This effect also applies to Dot. So you will be doing more damage overall, but having 3 stacks at a time, you probably will want to run another debuffer with him, such as Silverwolf. And Silverwolf will be really good with him, because if they don't have imaginary weakness, you can apply it to them and now they can be imprisoned. And Welt can also weakness break now, along with that imprisonment. And so that is also very good. And if you have all the stacks up, that is a total of 72%, which is a very big damage buff. So moving on to his relics, the best relic set he has is the imaginary set, and that is because the 2-piece increases his imaginary damage by 10%, and as he is all imaginary damage, that is going to be very good. And the 4-piece, when attacking debuffed enemies, the wearer's crit rate increases by 10%, and since you're always going to be slowing them, they're always considered debuff, and so you'll pretty much always have a 10% crit rate bonus, and their crit damage increases by 20% against imprisoned enemies, and since it's all, and just him in general, imprisons very often, you will often be able to get this off too, so you'll often have a 20% crit damage bonus. So this is a very, very good set for him, and is easily his best set currently. And another thing you could do is rock 2-piece of this with the 2-piece musketeers. The only reason I say 2-piece is because the 4-piece is not good for him, because the wearer speed increases by 6%, which is whatever, and the basic attack damage increases by 10%. But you're mainly going to be using a skill and ultimate, so I do not recommend going for the 4-piece on this. Definitely recommend at most having 2-piece, but a general recommendation is to do a 4%, or not 4%, 4-piece on the imaginary set. But again, 2-piece is completely alright. And so the best planet ornament you want for him is the Herta Space Station, and the reason for this is because it increases the wearer's attack by 12%, and when the wearer's speed reaches 120 or higher, the wearer's attack increases by an additional 12%. So you're getting a 24% attack bonus if you just have 120 speed or higher, which is very easy to do, especially with the speed boots. And the reason I say this one is because he does somewhat scale off attack percent, or just his attack in general, and so you're gonna definitely want more attack, and this is pretty much the freest way to get more attack so he can do more damage. And now his second one you could do is the IPC's Mega HQ, and what this one does is increases the wearer's effect hit rate by 10%. Meanwhile, the wearer's attack percent increases by an amount that is equal to 25% of the current effect hit rate up to a maximum of 25%. So this one is because the sweet spot you want to build your Welt with is at least around 30 to 40% effect hit rate. You always want to have around that much because it is pretty much the sweet spot for him. And this one will make it easier because you're getting a free 10%, and you're also getting a maximum of 25%, but you're obviously not going to have this all the way. So you're not going to have a 25% attack bonus because it scales off effect hit rate. So you're not going to have this. So you will be doing less damage overall, but you have the effect hit rate be easier to get. And so for the actual stats, where you're going to run on the orb is obviously imaginary damage, as I mentioned previously. You want him to actually be doing damage too, so you're definitely going to be rocking imaginary damage here. And for the link rope is actually flexible. You can run attack percent if you do want more damage and more scaling, obviously. But in order to have his ult up longer, you can do energy recharge. Energy recharge is another very strong option on him because you want to have his ult active pretty often. So if you want to do that, that is perfectly fine. Attack percent is also very good for more damage overall. But you can do energy recharge. And for substats, the number one substat you'll want is effect hit rate until you have around 30 to 40%. If you have 30 to 40%, you want to just focus on getting your crit rate, crit damage on a pretty good spot, and if they already are, then you focus on speed. That's pretty much how you want to be focusing on his stats. And that is pretty much it for the build guide on Welt Yang. Let me know if you guys really like using him as much as I do. As I said, he is one of my favorite characters to use, and favorite characters just in Honkai Star Rail in general. He is just such a fun unit to use. I built him mainly on DPS, along with the debuff portion because he can do that. And he has never let me down a single time. And yeah, I will continue to use him. And yeah, so again, let me know if you guys like using him, what your builds are going to be looking at, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.